Okay, I guess that's the end of the music. But I gotta actually socialize just a little bit here, or else it wouldn't be much of a stream. Just double checking. I usually get too focused on what I'm doing, so I don't get to talking as much as I should. That's why I'm kind of a terrible ah, fucking flash. I'm kind of a terrible streamer that way. I just get lost in what I'm doing. Yeah, I'm doing my best to get a Dutch angle effect. Oh, damn it, going on here. Yeah, this version of Flash has a glitch on it where it keeps. If I click on the zoom tool, I've got maybe a 1 out of 5 chance it's going to take me to the upper left hand side of the screen, even though that's not where I selected. But since I don't have the original installation disk anymore for this, I can't install it. I actually don't even have my damn information anymore. Well, I put it somewhere. Yeah. I'll just assume it probably got lost when I collected up my stuff and moved out of California. I suppose I could always I could always toss on an eye patch and go to the Pirate Bay or do something like that, but I don't really want to risk it. You know, I've tried Toon Boom. I don't like it. Its interface is really wonky. Not something I'm really proud of, but I am a bit of a dinosaur. Here we go. Here we go. That's just my mom dropping winter clothes off. There. Yeah, starting over in life, moving back in with your folks at 40. Whew. Well, actually, no, I'm not 40 anymore. I'm 41, almost 42. Could be worse. It's just how life is right now. I suspect it's probably going to be a little bit more rough like that for a lot of people in the coming months. Keep hearing stories about the housing bubble getting ready to crash, and I don't know, if I was 10 years younger I wouldn't be paying attention to any of that crap or even think anything about it, but now that I'm a little bit older and realize what that all means, it's pretty scary situation. So either way, you guys want to ask questions, go for it. There we go. I do it a little late, but I think that panel is done. Yeah, time flies. God, that was that was 13 years ago when I did that Left 4 Dead parody. Kind of sad that a lot of it didn't age that well in terms of animation, but I was just kind of doing whatever I wanted to, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. That's actually been a huge problem I've had looking at my older work, because I just did stuff. I didn't think about things like proper framing or video resolution or anything like that. And now I'm a little bit more careful about that stuff. I try and plan ahead a little bit more, but I usually still kind of get lost in just doing things. Because I don't know, I suppose I really just enjoy the feeling of being, well, being as productive as you can be, sitting in front of a computer, clicking on your mouse and keyboard. There we are. Yeah, I'm still only halfway done with that first episode of the new Left 4 Dead tune I'm doing. I'm not even sure. I was originally going to call it Left for Lol again, but I'm not sure I can get away with that now, as the story has kind of changed some as I've pieced together what I want to have happen. Since it's kind of ends on a somber moment, and I'm not sure if I can quite balance that out with some of the ridiculous silly shit I got planned. But I'll get that figured out soon enough. The nice thing about that is I can, until it's done, I got time to rethink what my approach to stuff is going to be. But yeah, everything, all the internet humor seems to keep changing and getting, I'd say, a little bit more repetitive, which is both good and bad. But you can still only hear the same type of joke so many times before you just tune it out. I suppose that's what happened to all the Rage comics from, was it 8 or 9 years back? I guess the only thing that really killed those was when Hollywood started using them in their advertisements. They're done. Okay. I don't use Twitter as much as I should. I know I also don't use it properly because I might do 3 or 4 posts a week, because I don't have a lot to say. I usually sit back and watch everybody else freak out. Instagram, I don't have an account on. Really, I just opened up one. I haven't really gotten around to doing anything on it, because I've kind of been trying to finish up a certain amount of work ahead of time, so I actually have stuff to post other than me making fun of people being dumbasses over, let's see, what's the latest thing? Yeah, Musk bought Twitter, and I'm seeing one side of the aisle freak out like it's World War III over that. And it's funny, but it's very tiresome. Especially when I see how many of those people are actually older than I am, and they're acting like they're 12 years old all over again. Ugh. But no, I've always been bad at social media because I get lost in what I'm doing here, you see. And I don't have time to bicker too much with people, but I probably should get off my butt and start doing a little bit more of that. So, I mean, hell, I barely God, I spent so many years barely updating my YouTube channels. The exception being if I actually had something to upload. That's the problem. I never really adjusted to when things on the internet started changing about 6 years ago, where all of a sudden YouTube wanted everybody to be their own brand name spokesman and create their own communities and things like that. Well, I get lost in my art, even if it takes me forever and a day to finish it. And I just kind of wanted to let my content speak for itself and just update it 5 or 6 times a year, and can't really do that anymore. Especially if I want to finish off getting the partnership here, since I'm about was it 42 subs away from hitting the 1,000 sub mark, which is the first threshold. But the other thing is, I gotta fix my watch time, because my watch time is pretty bad. Last 8 years of my life, I've just been so busy dealing with other people's stuff also that doesn't really help. I've lost a lot of my focus since all kinds of shit's happened in not to me but around me the last 8 years. I got laid off from my job at Stanford. I was a Braille transcriber. I don't remember too much of the Braille alphabet anymore, but I still got my old textbooks. And after that happened, I went back to college because I wanted to fix what was wrong with my screenwriting, because I wasn't able to recognize when I was creating something that was necessary or if it was just fluff or stuff like that. And then by the time I finished that up, let's see, it was it 6? No, it's been 6 years since then. 7 years ago, everything around me started to kind of change. So I got the notice that my father had a heart attack on Mother's Day while I was finishing up my last 2 months of college. And yeah, he survived, but he was getting a heart attack at age 57, almost 58 is not a good thing. And then 6 months later after that, my grandmother got rushed to the emergency room. And that was when we found out she was actually dying, even though she seemed like she was in perfect health. She just lost a kidney to cancer, and it had just started to spread. And unfortunately, nothing was gotten in time, and there was nothing we could really do. So I ended up helping my grandfather since I was there, I was the caretaker for my grandparents at the time. We pretty much spent that last year of her life doing what we could to make sure she was comfortable. And then after she died, it was a few months after she died, both my grandfather's dogs had to get put down. And then a month after that, he was having some issues, and took him to the hospital. And it turns out he actually had colon cancer, which kind of bit him, not to be ironic, but that kind of bit him in the ass. And then after that, it was several months of him kind of deciding whether he wanted to actually get the surgery or not. I don't know. I can understand. He just lost his wife of 64.5 years. So you kind of question whether you want to stick around after you lose somebody like that. And then after he got his surgery, my mom was showing signs of dementia at 58. And unfortunately, it's kind of come to pass that she does have it. It's frontal lobe dementia, which, and then 2 years after that, after my grandfather recovers from his surgery, he starts showing signs of dementia. And in between all this, I also end up losing 2 great uncles. It's a lot of shit to hit you all at once. And I think that's when I actually started noticing I couldn't write humor as well as I used to. Someone commented on one of my old videos that my new stuff wasn't as entertaining as the old stuff, and I responded saying I actually don't remember how to write like I used to anymore. And I kind of miss that. It's actually a real downer that I can't remember how to write the bizarre, snappy, weird stuff I used to do 13 years ago. I've been trying to figure that out for the last few days. I just kind of came to the conclusions that since I'm not the same person anymore, I can't really remember how to do that stuff. Because I do want to put down funnier stuff because I know I could do better. I just haven't figured things out. So yeah, combine all that and then finish it off with COVID. That's been the last several years of my life. Some of it's been easier to deal with than other things. So, you guys got any questions? Just ask. Because I'm not going to finish the stream until I finish up the line work here. Oh, I actually kind of had to give up gaming for a while, so since I started to put more time into working on my writing and my art, I haven't played as much. I also had to get a new desktop because when I moved here, I fired up my old desktop and it worked for all of one day. And then the motherboard died. So I had to get a new desktop, and the new one I got, I thought it had better specs than it did. The processing speed is so-so. It gets a little jittery when I play Team Fortress 2. But that isn't the real problem. The real problem is for some reason they partitioned the memory on this computer very odd. It's between 2 solid state drives, which is good. It's just one solid state drive is like a pathetic 20 gigs. 20 gigs wouldn't have been pathetic 10 years ago, but now you can, having an OS like Windows already eats up about half that. So I had to uninstall a bunch of stuff and make room, and I ended up picking some more solid state drives after I backed up my my old hard drive, and things don't play as well as they could, and I haven't figured out how to sort that out, and also since I need more time to actually work on making stuff, I just had to toss out playing Team Fortress 2 for a while. Once I start getting a small backlog of content set aside, I can go back and play a little bit. But the other issue I have, and this is the real pisser, is internet is very expensive here. And between my folks and I, you can run the internet bill up to 100 to 115 a month, and I'm trying to get it back down to 85 or so, since that's part of what I cover living here. So I do miss gaming, but I'm also kind of burned out on games right now because nobody's putting out stuff that I'm really interested in. I used to really love survival horror, and then Resident Evil 4 came out, and despite being a step in the direction the series needed to go, it simultaneously ruined survival horror. And Silent Hill kind of fell apart after the third game. I actually listened to some of the rantings on Masahiro Ito. Yeah, 115. They lowered it back down to 100 because that wasn't the usual, which is nice, but another part of the problem is because it's been winter time here, there isn't anything to do outside because it's too damn cold. So I don't get to go outside and go for walks or hikes and things like that I actually really like doing, because I kind of realized I can take it when it's 25 degrees outside, as long as I got a nice coat on. But once it starts getting below that, it's way too much. And there isn't anything I can really do about that other than stay inside where it's warm and watch silly YouTube videos or try and make silly YouTube videos. That's okay. I've been having fun learning about Japanese history on the side, because I do like history. It's a lot of fun. There we go. Yeah, normally I don't cannibalize my art when I can help it here. That's why you see me copy and paste in the two hands here. I'll probably adjust the thumb on this one and maybe a pinky over here so it's not a complete copy and paste. But yeah, it was getting down to 10 below here, and then we had a few days where it was 20 below. And when it gets to that point, there is nothing to do. Oh. SG Boy, you might have to refresh. Or did I bump something? If you guys can hear me, press 1 in the chat. We'll try that. Okay, one person can hear me. Good. Okay, 2 people can hear me. That's even better. But yeah, I'm trying to keep the internet bill about $80 a month or so if I can. And my mom loves to stream movies, so that kind of eats up the data, and I'm usually watching stuff, and then I know streaming here is going to eat up the data some also. But I'm figure if I do a few streams a month, that's not going to be too terrible. I've been trying to find ways to lower the data outside of that, and I don't want to have to do the whole your prices are too expensive, lower everything by 20% or else we're gonna switch services. Because I've never been a fan of that shtick, if I can help it. But I've also never had to deal with Comcast, so I know that's not a necessity yet. But I'm still trying to get some of my bigger projects actually out there this year, even though it's taken a hell of a long time to plan them out because I don't storyboard, which I've gotten better at storyboarding somewhat, but when you have to plan everything out, sometimes it takes the magic away of creating stuff, even though you really don't want to do that. Because everything looks better when you put that little bit of extra pre-production work into it. And God, I'm terrible at that. I really kind of miss the days of being young and dumb and just doing whatever the hell I wanted and getting mostly the right results out of it. But then I see the work I've pulled off over the last year and like how much better everything's become. So it's a trade-off. I could work like a spaz, or I could try and be a little bit more professional with what I do and get better results in the long run. I suppose it's the same with screenwriting. You really got to sit around and plan that shit out, or else you're just going to put out something. Trying to think of a polite way of saying something that's flat and doesn't really do anything. I'd say, I guess I could go back to bitching about the Batman film that came out a while ago, but that really just riles me up because it's such a bland film. They had a lot of good ideas that just never really went anywhere. That's one of my things, though. I love stories. That's probably why I like history as much as I do, because there's all kinds of interesting stuff out there and people you get to learn about. Yeah, I thought the Batman was a very bland film. It didn't have it set itself up like it was going to be a really grand mystery, and they were saying it was going to be film noir. And I love film noir. My favorite film noir movies are The Maltese Falcon and The Big Sleep. Those are both Humphrey Bogart films. If you haven't seen them, check them out. The reason the film just didn't work primarily was the characters. They really fucked up the characters in that movie. I'm still not sure how the hell they did it, but they did it. A big thing about me is in stories, I love characters. Because you can have character-driven movies are some of the best stuff out there because everything falls on the choices that the character makes. You get causality. It's, one of my favorite examples is Die Hard. The first one, I never cared that much for any of the other ones. I didn't see the fifth one. But when you have a movie that's focused on the characters, then everything they do has to matter, because every choice they make causes a ripple in the story, and it usually ends up biting them in the ass. And I remember the guys from South Park were talking about how you need to have actions lead up to consequences in your stories, but you make it the characters. Oh, damn it! I fucked up right there. Look at that. Yeah, that's better. You gotta have the characters' choices create conflict and drama within the story. So everything that John McClane does in the first Die Hard film is changing the story itself, because everything he's doing is screwing up Hans Gruber and his crew's plan. But he has to be careful about what he does because his wife is also their hostage. And so he's also systematically trying to get the police involved so he doesn't have to do the stuff that he does, and he doesn't get any help from them, and so then he's having to do wilder stuff and take bigger risks, and every risk he takes, he's putting his life on the line. And these are all amazing things you want to do in a story. And the Batman didn't do any of that, because the Batman was story-driven, not character-driven. Everything in that film revolved around what the Riddler was doing, and it was also trying to lead up into a rabbit hole of information showing how awful Gotham really was. So, what $25 a month goal? Oh, you guys subbed. Thank you. Oh, jeez. Oh, wow. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate that. I'm trying to do better with my rewards on my Patreon. At the moment, right now, it's just I show off a few sketches of stuff, as well as behind the scenes tune stuffs. Oh, was it your computer or was it your phone, SG boy? Get that a little bit of font over here. Oh, I haven't even had chance to speak in normal fonts. I do commissions. I just haven't done them for a while. A lot of the stuff that I've done for other people, I generally don't charge a hell of a lot. I've done what every other artist has done. I've done weirdo fetish art for people, and they seem to like it. I don't advertise it because I don't want to say it's not something that I'm associated with, or I'm not proud, or that I'm not proud of. It's just I generally don't think my work has a lot of value. I always have trouble setting up prices and shit like that, because for me, I'm just doing something and I'm going to do it anyways, and I don't even think about what the value of it is. Oh, oh, that's right. This font doesn't have a lowercase f. But yeah, it depends on what you want. I'm not really against a lot of stuff, so long, like, with the exception of I do try to avoid political shit, because that politics has been kind of over inserted into everything these days, and that does really depress me. You remote control your PC, and they're like, oh, that's a weird situation. Oh, I might be able to match older art styles. It depends. Some of the thing about art styles is that I've done it before. If I've done it before, I can recreate it mostly. It's just like getting on a bike. It takes a while to get used to if you haven't ridden one for a long time. It's okay. It's okay, SG boy. There's nothing wrong with being weird. There are worse things in life than being strange. I'd say that probably one of the worst things in life you can be is empty. And I know a lot of people don't think about a lot of that stuff. Some of it's a West. I think some of that comes down to being a Western thing. But I don't know. Philosophically, I've kind of tried to be more neutral about the world around me, as opposed to either irrational, angry, happy, sad, all that stuff. Just because I've realized something. There's a. It's okay. I realized about 6, 7 months ago, after giving it some serious consideration, that there is a lot of money online in being angry. And a lot of people don't realize that, but I started to put the pieces together after actually just sitting down and thinking over why the hell on everybody on social media is as angry as possible. And I used to think it was for attention and things like that, and I realized no, that's not it. There's something more. And it's a conspiracy theory partially, so take it with a grain of salt. But I think that the reason everybody is being engineered to be as angry as possible over every single little tiny damn thing online isn't just the standard political divide and conquer tactics where you got to turn the left against the right against the left, and all that stuff. I think it's more corporate. Because if you're angry and you're not centered, you're more likely to spend more time arguing with people online. And if you're spending more time arguing with people online, then you're giving more data for the companies to sell. But it goes beyond that, because if you're also angry online, you're going to find a way to fill that gap that anger just tore up inside you. It's going to make you more susceptible to being impulsive in your spending and things like that. I have no proof of this other than some, basic advertising stuff that I learned several years ago, where people who aren't happy are the ones who spend the most money and are the most impulsive shoppers. I think that has been carried over in social media, and I think they're just making a killing pissing people off. And I know some of this got started like 20 years ago with Fox News pushing really stupid, weirdo shit about politics and things like that. I always remember them going after Mr. Rogers a few years after he passed away. And they were blaming him for the, special snowflake culture you see in colleges. Which was a pretty asinine thing to do, because Mr. Rogers never did anything to anybody. Granted, I'm biased because I grew up watching him, as did... Actually, so did my father and aunts and uncles. But getting people angry is so easy. And if you get people angry, you get them more involved in stuff emotionally, and you get them to spend more because now there's something for them to rally behind. And that's depressing. That's kind of when I started to realize how sites like Reddit operate the way they do, because they love their rules, but they don't follow them. And if they do enforce them, it's usually for one side of the aisle and not both. And then it's a perfect cycle. Because on Reddit, all you got to do is post a bullshit article from Fox or CNN, and then all the people who read the article do the hard work. They get angry at each other for not agreeing with each other, and then they start doing internet flaming and fighting and all that silly shit. And then while they're doing that, there are other subreddits who are dedicated to watching people do stuff like this, posting that shit and carrying that cycle over. And this goes on and on all over the site. Well, that's all getting generated as user data. When you get angry, they get paid. I've actually been meaning to do a Joey comic about that, but I haven't been able to find the right words for it yet. Other than, obviously, the punchline, you get angry, they get paid. But that's how Twitter operates. That's how Facebook operates. That's how Reddit operates. I'm sure YouTube probably does the same. But that's the thing. Everybody's a product. Did Star Citizen ever come out? I don't remember. What was it? Back when I had friends, because I ended up kind of losing my connection to my friends, and around the same time, other stuff was going on in life, and I burned out. I meant to just go away for a few months and just take some time off and reflect. And then I had family stuff start happen on and on and on, and I guess my friends thought I needed more time even than I did, and never really followed through to check up on me. But I can't blame them for that because life happens. But yeah, did Star Citizen ever come out? Because my friends at the time were really psyched about that game. It did not? Oh, damn. Yeah, I'm actually trying to make a video game myself finally. I've got a programmer. We're doing a little survival horror game. It's kind of visual novelty, but it's got a little bit of combat in there also. It's nothing special. It's just based on ideas I've had for 20 something years for a simple combat system anyways. Because when I was growing up, the one game that I played the hell out of, and I still play a lot of it today, is Final Fantasy Tactics. I love isometric turn-based real-time strategies. But they don't have a lot of those out anymore, and the ones they do I'm not that interested in. So I kind of wanted to do a horror version of that, and that's what the game I'm making with another guy is, because I can't program at all. Programming is a legitimate language, and I've never been able to do it. Anytime I learn something in terms of programming, I forget it real quick, and it's embarrassing as hell. But yeah, it's the end of the end of 2022 is when the game's supposed to come out. Well, I hope so. It'd be nice to see it come out, because video games have taken over what movies used to do, because everybody gets to be more engrossed in an interactive world instead of a cinematic world where you just sit back and watch. And both can exist. It's just the quality. I don't know if you guys are as picky as I am, but the quality I've seen in storytelling in video games has really taken a dump. So I was watching, since I'm poor now. At the moment, I'm not buying any games, but I've been watching people play the Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remakes, and I wasn't impressed. I mean, I'm an amateur game designer at best. We'll see what happens when I finally get my game out in some form or another. But I was disappointed. They completely fucked up the stories in those games. And what kills me about a lot of that stuff is they had a lot of the right ideas. The execution didn't work out that well. And I don't know how that ended up happening, but they took a lot of the heart out of the game by changing things about characters and stuff like that. I'm going back to characters and stuff. I'm very much dogmatic on that, but I didn't like the changes they made to the antagonists in the Resident Evil 2 remake, because they, for some reason, turned William Birkin into a screaming man baby, which was very weird to see. I actually, when I saw the scene where he gets shot up by the Umbrella Corps after they steal the G virus from him, first off they check him to see if he's dead and say he's dead, and then he's just up and giving himself an injection one scene later. Which, okay, that's a little strange, but having him scream out "G is my creation" like a toddler, I actually almost fell out of my chair laughing at. But it was supposed to be serious. It was supposed to be, oh my god, this guy's crazy, and no, he's just kind of a lunatic. But they took out all the good conflict in the game. I don't. So in stories, I'll explain why. My favorite villain from Resident Evil series was actually Annette Birkin, who isn't technically a villain. Uh, Walking off gunshots while screeching, yeah. But Annette Birkin was a fantastic character in the original Resident Evil 2 game, and there's a reason for this. She's an incredibly dynamic character, and she's dynamic because of what she's doing in the game. First off, she's not there. She's kind of a gray character in a lot of ways. She's not there to purposely kill people, with the exception of Ada, because Ada's a spy. Which I gotta say, to be honest, Ada Wong is the absolute worst spy in the history of anything. If Annette Birkin's able to figure it out, and but she's doing so much in the original game, because the original game, the character is traumatized because her husband has just essentially been murdered and turned himself into a BOW to stop Umbrella from getting his weapon. Secondly, Umbrella is coming for her and trying to get the G virus, so she's trying to protect her husband's legacy. Then there's her also loosely protecting Sherry by getting Sherry out of there and keeping her at the police station. But she's got all these parts that are connected to what's just happened. And the best part, I thought, is she's half crazy over everything that's just happened. Because she's just lost her husband. Her life's work has just been caused a breach of catastrophic proportions in the city. She's kind of trying to fix it, but at the same time trying to keep Umbrella from getting the virus out of, I guess, a sense of pride. And then there's her estranged relationship with her daughter, who she ultimately has to kind of help save, but she's kind of stuck in fight or flight mode. And this creates, in terms of screenwriting, I think this is perfect. This makes the character very dynamic. She's very sympathetic. This is interesting because she's causing problems and trying to fix them at the same time. And there's so much going on for the character. I think that's really great. And then in the remake, she went from a mad scientist to a sad scientist, where she's kind of mopey and like, oh, we didn't know this was gonna happen. I thought, you're making a fucking virus that's designed to end the world. What do you mean you didn't know this was gonna happen? So they tried to be more socially conscious when they did the remakes, and they destroyed the games. They cut so much content out of the second remake, I didn't know if I wanted to even bother paying attention to the Resident Evil 3 remake, but I loved 3 out of the original first 3 games that came out. See, I was 19 when Resident Evil 3 came out, but the game design on that game was fantastic. I'm still kind of floored at how they pulled off what they did with the limitations of the technology of the era. Because, yeah, they recycled a lot of assets to make that game, but they had enough of their own additions to it. I think the game is still pretty underappreciated, because it's a smaller game, smaller story, but damn, the design that went into that game was really phenomenal. And the story was also really good. I love that they were smart enough to plan ahead with replay value and do all that crazy shit. And then when the remake of the third game came out, I was just, what the fuck is this shit? It's a single player 5-hour playthrough, which is that's about a normal playthrough for a survival horror game. But there's no randomization in the game. The new story, I probably tore a hole in my skull, scratching my head, wondering why the hell they made the choices they made. Because first off, nobody in that game is likable, which is weird, because Carlos is supposed to be a charming character, and he kind of came across as, I'm going to say the S word, Carlos is a simp in that game. Everything he says and does is kind of dedicated around being impressed by Jill as a character. And Jill was always my favorite game from the original series. But God, they do a number on her in that game. She's written more like an angry teenage boy than a grown woman. I don't know what the fuck they were thinking when they wrote all that shit. And that was another problem I had with those games. They felt like they were written by somebody from the West. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. RE3 Remake was just depressing because the original game itself was so good, even though it wasn't Resident Evil 2. It didn't have as dynamic a story. It didn't have as many twists and turns in it, but it had a lot of good stuff in there. And they cut out the heart and the soul of that game. It's really depressing. The two elements from that story that I was mad that they cut out was, first off, the supervisor story, where Nikolai is, yeah, he's a bad guy, which it was kind of obvious that he was going to be a bad guy when you meet him first off in the game. But it's what he's doing that made him interesting, because when you first meet this character, he's not interested in anything you're doing. And he's just kind of doing his own thing in the background. And you can see he's a cold-hearted bastard after he shoots the one mercenary. And then you find out the big twist at the end is he's killing everybody, so he's the only supervisor alive, which will make him a very wealthy man, because then he's got all the battle data. That actually was a really nice twist. And then they changed it in the new one, where he was hired to just kind of destroy Umbrella, but he's also written like a cartoon villain. I don't know why they pushed the subplot and the finale of that game to have him be believing that Jill isn't going to shoot him because she couldn't pull the trigger one time. That made very little sense to me. And I'm an unproduced writer. I've only been writing really for this last year, because everything else I've done, I've just kind of done on my own, and I finally started to step my game up this year. And I had an opportunity to submit some stuff to some screenplay competitions. Haven't won anything other than 2 honorable mentions, but that's a rite of passage for any writer, so that means I'm doing something right, which is cool. It would be really nice to get an honorable mention and like $100 out of it or something like that, so I can properly list that down on my taxes as having earned money as a screenwriter, but maybe one of these days. But that's the thing about writing characters and worlds and shit like that. It's like setting up Legos. You gotta make sure everything fits together in a certain way, and the nice thing is, because you're the one making the Legos, you can do anything you want with them. And it's a lot of fun, but the price you pay for learning how to be a screenwriter is you gotta sit back and try not to puke when you see other movies done by professionals break the rules you learned. And in my case, I've got a very analytical mind. I said this on the last stream. I can watch and analyze stuff really quick, and I don't really want to do that. It's just kind of automatic. So I also do that with video game stories as well. And yeah, Capcom has been dropping the ball real hard on their games. I was actually surprised, though, when they did Resident Evil 7, because I wasn't expecting anything from it. Maybe that's why I liked the story so much. Because even though the story is just the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, only with in the Resident Evil world, they were really clever with a lot of stuff they did. They had nice game design. They had some interesting new characters. It was a breath of fresh air, because they were also doing proper screenwriting with their video game story. Yeah, well, the cat's kind of pouting on her little cat tower right now, so I don't have to worry about that. But that's also the problem I have with a lot of other screenwriting now. The new thing is to, instead of construct, it's to deconstruct everything. That's why Star Wars is in the condition it's in. That's why Star Trek is in the condition it's in. Everything has to be a deconstruction, and I don't get why that's not interesting. It's more interesting to build something than to take it apart. Yeah, eight really sucked. It had a few nice twists in it, but eight really they ran out of steam real quick with what they were doing because one, their villains were terrible. They were hyping up the villains to be something special, and every villain was one thing. And this is what I was complaining about the Batman, that film that just came out, where everybody was shoehorned into being one thing. Batman is Batman to a fault. There is no Bruce Wayne because Bruce Wayne is Batman in this approach, but he's a mentally ill, obsessive Batman. And they said, was it Matt Reeves said the whole reason he's that way is because he's traumatized, and no, trauma doesn't do that to you. I've got trauma. Hell, most people do. And there's a lot of stuff with superheroes you can't just say they're traumatized. That's why they're these quirky weirdos. You gotta emphasize the trauma more and show what it does to them as people. If they had had at least one scene in that film where he's trying to sleep and he has a night terror about his parents getting shot, and then gets right back up and goes to work as Batman, that would have been something that shows that this is something the character cannot escape. That's incredibly sympathetic. This is also screenwriting 101. Big thing about screenwriting for everybody who isn't a writer, which I'm sure some of you guys who are listening want to be writers and things like that. You want to have a sympathetic character. Sympathetic characters are the easiest ones to root for. These are the ones you identify with. A big thing that my teacher always taught us was John Wick. John Wick goes on a killing spree because somebody killed his dog. Sure, but other films have done similar things. There's actually one silly one with Bradley Cooper as a villain. I think he's got a Slavic accent, and he's this horrible, weirdo, quirky villain. And he sees somebody kick a dog, and the guy is unrelated to anything else going on in this story. And he sees somebody kick the dog, and he goes over there and beats the shit out of the guy, and then takes this stray dog with him and pets him. And well, guess what? He's now a weirdo, quirky villain, but he just showed a different side of who he is. That's why one of the most sympathetic comic characters out there is still Guts from Berserk, because as screwed up as he is, and he's all kinds of violent, and he's half crazy, but you see him around kids, and you see he doesn't like seeing kids hurt. And that's actually a big contradiction for the character, not just based on his personality, but you look at him, he looks like the villain. Other people who are smarter than I have done analysis videos like this. But you get to show who the character is. And if you show that they have empathy, even a bad guy, that makes them a really interesting creation. But I think it was Stephen He on YouTube had a hilarious video a few months ago called Every Cinematic Villain from 2021. And he's playing two characters in there where he's a cop interviewing essentially the villain there, and the villain is coming up with every kind of excuse for why he robbed the bank. And every excuse is some lame bit of tragedy where my village was flooded, the government foreclosed on our home, my grandmother was sick. It's basically every excuse in the book. Well, it's not interesting. You have these characters own who they are, and you can be more than one thing, and that's why the villains in Resident Evil 8 were really flat, because everybody was kind of a caricature of one thing. You had the gross fish guy who's constantly depressed about not being Mother Miranda's favorite. You've got Lady Dimitrescu, who is a man-hating vampire weirdo. But that's the thing, her shtick is she's kind of just a man-hating weirdo. There's the obnoxious puppet lady, who I'm kind of tired of seeing the adult woman acting like a small child trope. There are ways to do it. You just got to find a way to make sure that there's a little bit more there. And then there's what was it, Lady Demetrius's daughters, who are all kind of the same character. It did have, yeah, admittedly, it had a pretty good ending. It had a nice twist, but it also fell into another pattern that Capcom has really kind of been struggling with, and that is they keep repeating the same story elements. And I'm talking about Chris here. So Chris leaves the BSSA that he helped found because he's disillusioned with them, and then you find out at the end that they've been corrupted. Okay, well, they kind of did that already in Resident Evil Revelations and Revelations 2. So that's nothing new. They're probably going to do the same thing with Leon when they eventually get back to doing his story. Yeah, that's another thing about Resident Evil that I get very depressed about. The original games were all written and in a certain way where every story kind of built off the previous game, and you got to see more lore. But every story was focused on who the villain was, and the villain was always the evil Umbrella Corporation. And every game, you always, for the first 7 years of these games, you got to play these events and get a little bit closer to, I guess, seeing Umbrella up close and finally getting a chance to see this horrible corporation and taking them down personally. And then when Resident Evil 4 happened, that was removed. But they spent, 5 games building up to the player actually kind of getting to go there and, personally be a part of taking down Umbrella, and nope. That all fell apart. I know Resident Evil 4 was never, the one that came out was never supposed to be what came out. It just ended up happening that way. Because I've seen all the videos where you see the alpha footage and the early concept art. Yeah, yeah, it is a reskin of 4. As a matter of fact, I was bickering with somebody on the Resident Evil subreddit saying that ever since Resident Evil 4 came out, that is the only game Capcom has been making. Because Resident Evil 5 was a reskin of 4. A really bad one, too, because they took out all the horror, which really made me sad because there's stuff in the game that I liked. I didn't like the fact that everything was kind of a reskin. The Magini were just the Ganados all over again, with a few more features and a few more types. Wesker was now Sadler trying to destroy the world, and which it's odd to have a character who's so obsessed with power want to create a race of people who would, in theory, be as powerful as he is. But this is a character who doesn't share power, doesn't want to give it over to anybody or have anybody else have any power. So that's kind of a contradiction, but they wanted to finish off the original series story arc. Yeah, they did. Shoujo saying they used Resident Evil 7 to emotionally manipulate the audience to spite them in 8. Yeah, they kind of did. And they don't know how to tell a good Resident Evil game anymore. And I remember reading that there was some kind of a leak that hackers got on Capcom. And they said Capcom was setting up shop down in Los Angeles, and that they wanted to cater towards Western audiences' sensibilities. And that's why the characters, when they did the remakes, were so weird. Because there was a definite bias in how the male characters are written in the female ones, where I thought was very strange, because I didn't notice too much of a difference between the characters in the original game. Granted, the original game's writing was never meant to be anything other than a B-movie. B-movie writing can be good, though. But they really went out of their way in the remakes to make the female characters a lot stronger than the male characters, emotionally and dramatically. And you can do that, but don't be so obvious about it. If you layer your characters just a little bit and let them be more than what they appear to when you first meet them, you get really good results. And I'm still learning how to do that with my silly work, because creating stuff for YouTube and trying to create better stuff for YouTube, I have to be more analytical about what I do, and it takes a little bit longer to do it. which is a pain in the ass because I'm trying to upload more than 6 or 7 times a year. But people love a well-written character. So that's what there's a big difference between Captain Jack Sparrow in Pirates 1 and Captain Jack Sparrow from the other Pirates films. And they made him a character pretending to be an idiot to a character who was just a lucky idiot. And they took away any bit of nuance there was. Yeah, that's the problem with Capcom right now. They are, for whatever reason, it could be because I hear Sony is doing the same stuff. Some of this is just from leaks, which did get partially confirmed. But when they say cater to the Western audiences, they mean, what even is that crowd called anymore? I remember, they were called SJWs, blue hairs, commies, weirdos, Tumblerinas. It used to be called all kinds of things now. Well, for whatever reason, they seem to think that this crowd is the majority, and if they are, they aren't buying anything, because I've seen a lot of the sales for a lot of these games and movies and things like that. I think I'll just call them postmodernist weirdos. But they don't create. They like to deconstruct because they think that's interesting. And there's nothing wrong. Analyzing stuff and being critical is cool. I do it every day. But at some point, you got to get off the pot and create something on your own. Because you take a look at the quality of work from Disney, DC over the last few years. They've all dropped the ball, and I don't know why. I'm not even going to predict it. But it's not the first time Capcom has done something like this, because they ended up tossing out the it's not the current producer, it's one of the older producers of the series. 15 years ago said that Resident Evil was never going to go back to survival horror again because they wanted to cater to the new audience. And I was actually really mad about that, because that was back when I really used to care about Resident Evil stuff, because it was still an exciting, interesting series. But I thought it was pretty fucking disrespectful to say, we don't need the audience that helped build this brand up anymore. We want the new audience that's paying an extra few bucks. And then they kind of just spent the next, up until Resident Evil 7, they were just remaking Resident Evil 4 left and right. Resident Evil 6 was Resident Evil 4 with a few new movesets and improved Ganados. Resident Evil 5 was Resident Evil 4 without horror and more action emphasis. The Revelation series was actually pretty damn good, with the exception of Revelations 2's ending, which I loved Barry Chapter 3 and Claire Chapter 3 in Revelations 2. That was the first time in God knows how many years that they actually put out something that felt like classic Resident Evil. The dev team did a phenomenal job on those sections, but they couldn't make the landing. But then 7 came out and showed that they knew how to tell a really good story. And they went back to the classic stuff. And even though I'm not an FPS fan traditionally, I liked it. I liked that they showed growth in the characters and the villains, and everybody got to be just a little bit more than what you thought they were when you first met them. Yeah. The reason they don't create is because they do a parasitic storytelling. Yeah. It does. And being able to tear something down doesn't make you a smart person. Being able to build something doesn't make you a smart person either, but being able to build something shows that you know how to that you actually know how to create some. I've struggled with creating a lot of stuff because I get a lot of false starts, and then I realize, oh shit, I can't do that. And then I used to have this bad habit of, when I'd try to do something, I would try to force it to happen, and then when I couldn't make it happen, I'd shut down. And it wasn't intentional either. This just sort of happened automatically, and I didn't figure it out until like 6 or 7 years ago, that if a story I'm working on isn't working and I'm shutting down, then something's wrong with the story. and then I have to figure out why it isn't working, which is really depressing, because I want to I want to really start cranking stuff out a little bit faster and not sacrifice the quality. But it takes a long time to be able to create and build, and that's why I see a lot of people on Twitter giving authors shit who don't cater to them. Well, they're not meant to. You know, authors like to do stuff for themselves too. But I don't know. I usually try and steer clear of this shit when I can, because it doesn't go anywhere. It gets everybody riled up, and then, like I said, your data is just getting collected and sold to some weirdo in marketing anyways. And I think that's it for the line work. Yeah, there we go. I think that's actually pretty good. Need to add just a little bit of well, I can adjust the background just a little bit so it isn't a true copy and paste, just because I do, like I said, I get lost in the details and I get obsessive. There. Lazy but doable. But yeah, it takes a hell of a lot to create and plan out something, and that's when I see a film really pull it off in terms of the writing. That's when I get real excited and it makes the film memorable to me. That's why like the old noir films I mentioned. So if you haven't seen The Maltese Falcon with Humphrey Bogart or The Big Sleep with Bogart, these are two of my favorite films of his anyways, give them a check out. That's what proper noir is. And it's exciting stuff because you're seeing smart characters be who they are, and it feels like it's a real person to a point. But you get to see a different side, to the world, different side of characters. And then that's why the Batman didn't work as a film. First off, they neutered the characters, so everybody was one thing. Then they didn't do a very good mystery because they only had one character set aside who could be the possible villain. And they didn't layer it. If they'd had a few people who could have been responsible for it, that would have been something. But instead, they kind of made everything obvious, and what made it worse was it's the same plot point from Batman Begins, where in the first 20 minutes of the film you find out the reason Gotham is so rotten is because of Carmine Falcone. Well, there you go. That's your answer for this film too. The end result is a little different, but they try to make it a big mystery, and it's not a mystery. And the reason it didn't work as a mystery was because there was no other red herrings. If they had other mob bosses mentioned or referenced or even shown a little bit, then you can throw the audience off guard a little bit. I just ended up spending 2 hours and 15 minutes waiting for them to say, it's Falcone. And then when it happened, yeah, it's kind of obvious. You didn't have anybody else there that could possibly pull off something like that. And the connection they made with his parents to the mob in that film was also just cosmetic. They weren't actually part of the mob. His father just came to Falcone for help over something. And Falcone liked leverage, and there you go. That's why everything bad that happens in the film. When you make up a mystery like that, you got to make sure your rabbit hole goes somewhere. And it didn't really go anywhere. And it's a shame because they had a lot of really good actors in that film, and nobody got to really show off. Alfred gets discarded from the film after the first act. Yeah, I can sympathize, but if you want to watch, there are a lot of really good films out there you can get into. Some of them are from other countries, some of them are from the U.S. The reason that these films have stood the test of time is partially because these movies invented a lot of the tropes we use now. But the other reason is these were the films that broke new ground when they came out. It's like Citizen Kane. Anybody who isn't a film student is going to have trouble with that film because it's not dynamically written. The dialogue is very stagey and theatrical because Orson Welles and Herman Mankiewicz were from that era. But it doesn't have the life to it that dialogue would have a few years later after that film came out. But they found a new way to tell movies visually through that movie. The framing of characters, the use of shadows and sets, lighting, stuff like that. It's really solid stuff. I know of Orson Welles' shadow radio stuff. I've never gotten around to actually listening to it because usually when I'm listening to music, when I'm playing when I'm playing around on here trying to draw stuff. Actually, fun fact. So when I do when I do action scenes, which I haven't done one of these for a long time, I'm trying to get a new one going. When I do action scenes like the one I had with the girl being hunted by the robot all those years ago, which incidentally I'm going back to that world and trying to get a new tune set out there. I didn't storyboard that. I listened to music. And when I listen to music that works for me, I start seeing stuff in my head, and it's kind of automatic. I don't really have that much of a choice over it. Stuff happens for the most part in an order of events based on the music that I listen to. So I've got about 6 or 7 songs I want to use that are already about 50 or 60% storyboarded in my head. And anytime I listen to that music, it just plays up. So my mind does that automatically. I don't see stuff as clearly as I used to. Because there was a time I used to actually be able to listen to music and see stuff happening a lot clearer. Now I see moments in these sequences that happen really clear, and it's all set to the beat of whatever song I listen to. And it doesn't work that way with all music, but for whatever reason, that's how my mind works. If I listen to the right music, I start seeing images in my head, and I start seeing moments in a story or a sequence of events, and I don't have to storyboard because that's what I'm seeing. I just have to recreate it. Recreating it is hard. That's why I do actually need to storyboard more, because I want to capture it. Because it's actually a really cool thing. I think it's a variation of what's called hyperphantasia. That's people will see colors in their head when they listen to certain types of music. And for whatever reason, in my case, I kind of see stories happen. But I've only looked into this a little bit, and it doesn't quite match up. So I don't know. It'd be kind of nice to find out what the hell it is, because maybe I just got a really good imagination visually. Okay, that's another page. That's another page done. Whew. Should shift this over a little bit. But either way, so what I'm trying to show off here in this the framing of this silly comic, because Breached is kind of silly, Shasta is not. a dead serious character, even though there are elements of that to who she is. I've got my little bit of framing going on here where you see the foreground and the background and everything is centered on the skull. And I guess it's a little subconscious, whereas over here in the panel I did the other week, which by the way I have to redo this because I meant to have Shasta over here a little bit, because one element of this background here that I'm trying to emphasize is this little twist right here, where you see the somewhat distorted perspective there. It really helps create the illusion that the character is kind of trapped here. Now, realistically, this is forced perspective. She's not 10 feet deep in the ground. She's only about 5 feet or so into this little ground here, but I'm using forced perspective to create that illusion of depth. So, just like over here, how it's a bit of a slow reveal. You see the character is surrounded in a more narrow panel and things like that. I'm trying to get better with my framing of stuff because, like I said the other day, I like German expressionists, the expressionist German framing that they used to do in silent movies, like The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, where they show just really damn weird and distorted reality. I'm trying to tap into that because that's good stuff. I know The Lighthouse did a little bit of this, which incidentally, The Northman just came out. I'm still waiting for it to play down. Oh, right panel, wrong panel. Damn it. The Northman is coming out in a few weeks. Where I'm living, I'm looking forward to that because that's from the director of The Lighthouse, Robert Eggers. And I'm also a sucker for E. Olden style Viking medieval violent films. It's good stuff, and he's a pretty damn solid director from what I've seen. Even though I haven't seen all of The Lighthouse, I've seen some chunks of it. Like the scene with Willem Dafoe freaking out over him because he didn't like his lobster, which was really hilarious. But stuff like that, framing can do so much when you pull it off well. Yeah, I've never seen the full version of Metropolis. I'm kind of waiting for them to find some more footage of it because there's still like another 45 minutes of footage that was lost. And they ended up finding a section of it about, was it 12 years ago? There was some missing footage that they found from a vault in Argentina. And it had a character that was cut from the final version of the film, because I think Metropolis was like a 3-hour silent movie, which was rare for the time. But they cut out a bunch of footage and it was lost to time. Well, they've captured some of it. They got the ghost character, who I think she's the mad scientist's lover who passed away. But they got 15 minutes of footage that was lost and remastered it and reissued the film. I'm kind of waiting to see if they find a little bit more, because if you find something like that, you got to be able to find a little bit more. But the weird framing to create forced perspective and strange-looking worlds, I love that artsy shit. I'm not great at it myself. I'm getting better at it. But stuff like that, it creates a real impact. And we'll see how things look when I finish shading this, but it is 7 o'clock my time, and I'm going to go make some chicken salad. So I'll probably do another stream like this weekend, try and get a little bit more work done on Breached, because I want to try and get this ready for a competition. Because I've had a little bit of luck doing screenplay contests. So I might as well try my hand at doing another comic contest. London After Midnight, I would like to see. I know they ended up just remaking it, but they remade it, was it 7 years after they lost the original? And by then Lon Chaney had died of lung cancer. And it was the same story, but it was revised, and was the vampire character that Chaney played was actually made into a separate character that they had Lugosi play. Poor Bela Lugosi. Hollywood really fucked him over, and he got typecast really hard, but hell of an actor. Yep, I will. So I will catch you guys later. Hopefully next time I won't have the same problems with the technical difficulty stuff. OBS and YouTube for some reason are fighting with each other, and I can't. And I get caught in the middle of it where it says it doesn't recognize my account. And the solution I got to work last time didn't work this time. I had to do something else. So, other than that, I will catch you guys later. And one of these days I'll pull up some animation that I'm working on, and you can see me nitpick on that, which is about the same speed that I work on the comics. The only difference is you get to see stuff in motion a little bit more. But other than that, thanks for the 2 new subs on my Patreon. I appreciate it very much. I'll try and do a better rewards. I've actually got a second reward tune coming out in a few days. I'm trying to finish up the shot. It's just not quite ready yet. So other than that, I will catch you guys later, and thanks for hanging out with me.